Hello, welcome back again. This is an introduction into intervention design. Intervention design is the approach we're going to use, and the approach uses elements from speculative design. So it is a part of speculative design, but speculative design is much broader. So a speculative design practice could also lead, for example, to an artwork that can be shown in a gallery or in a museum. In intervention design, we are not focusing on that. The main essence of intervention design is that we want to build designs that can be experienced by people in the now. So the piece is translated into the current status quo. We think that's really important if you talk about transformative change, that people not only can see or read about the change and about the artwork or about the design or the service or the product you came up with, but that they are also able to experience it, because that communicates in a much better way. This is the method we are going to use. So we have 3 steps or phases: explore, imagine, and make. And it's not that difficult. The explore phase is much more focused on transformations. The imagine phase is much more about the experience. And the make phase is about the artifacts. So let me explain these 3 a little bit more in depth. So in the explore, the first phase we are going to use, because we use this in a much more linear way, although you can also see this as an approach where you can start wherever you want. In the explore, you are going to dive into a subculture. You are becoming a part of that subculture and understanding the subculture in all its details. And if you do that, you are able to see the trends that could be interesting in the future. Trends, behaviors, rituals that can be used to change the status quo. At the end of this phase, you will come up with a frame. And in the frame, you point out the direction that you are going to take in your in the next phase, in the phase where you're going to build an alternative reality, for example. In this phase, we have 3 steps: define, observe, and frame. So the define is, of course, the first kind of definition of what you are going to do. And see this definition as a fluid one that can change with new information you get. The second one is the observe. In the observe, you're going to dive into a subculture. You're going to understand the ecology of the subculture. The best will be to become a part of the subculture, but of course, we are currently kind of suffering under the COVID-19 regulations, so that might be difficult. You could say that this is like understanding the train and also its surroundings, especially the surroundings, because if you investigate a subculture, you are already investigating a culture that is different from the mainstream culture and the status quo. Within that culture, you are trying to find, by observing, relevant trends that you can use to change the status quo. When you found this trend, then you can frame it. And maybe you have not enough information, and then you are using this cycle over and over again until you have a frame that makes you happy. A frame that you can use to build a fictional world upon. That frame is really important because it's kind of the basis of what you are doing in intervention design. The frame is always focused on 3 levels that we already discussed in speculative design, namely the societal values and the shift that takes place within them. The changes in our norms of behavior, so our system, our, you could say, societal system, and also the artifacts, which are really important, because the artifacts show us much more what it will look like, the change, the frame, the trend. If you have a frame that is good enough, where you are happy about, then you are going to the next phase, the imagine. And this is the fun part, because in the imagine phase you are going to think about an alternative future or reality that is based upon the trends that you have seen. You are trying to translate those trends to an alternative reality where the trends will become the mainstream. You could say that it's like writing a screenplay for an episode of Black Mirror. And that is fun, right? The process is quite easy. It's a translation, of course, from the trends to that fictional world in the future or alternative reality. Then you are going to build it by using all the elements that you found in the explore phase, the macro, meso, and micro levels. You're going to build with them a world that is kind of solid and also shows what a trend will be about. And then you're going to tell the story about that fictional world. And that's the story of a day in the life of your protagonist. Somebody that you take and that you think is interesting enough to tell the story for. That protagonist can be human, but it can also be non-human. That's totally up to you. Be creative. We are using storytelling to come up with that kind of story. And that's like kind of making the screenplay for, as I already mentioned, Black Mirror. So you're using a protagonist, the one you are kind of following in the story, an antagonist, somebody that is trying to disrupt the things that the protagonist does. Then we have an incentive. Why do we tell the story? We have the complication. What is the friction that the protagonist has? How is the antagonist kind of not helping the protagonist reaching the goals that he, she, or I don't know, non-human has? And then, of course, already kind of an idea of what can the resolution be? How can the protagonist solve the complications? This is really, really fun. The third one is also fun because it's all about experimenting, making. So in this phase, you take that fictional world you built with the story in it, look at the resolutions and think, okay, how can we solve these resolutions with products or services? And you are going to build those. Well, this is really cool because building and making stuff is one of the most fun things there is. The process has three elements. Of course, the ideate, where you come up with all kinds of ideas to build products or to make services or to maybe think about artworks that would work. Then you're going to experiment because you have to build them. And that could be difficult because you don't know what the material could be. You don't know if the audience, the people you are eventually working for, think about the things you are doing. So this is also really fun and you have to do it over and over again. And that also goes for the evaluate, because there you are trying to test if the things you've done have the result you want to achieve with the audience, of course. So this is also a process that can be iterated over and over again. And well, we are on a tight schedule, so you will have a couple of weeks for this. So you can certainly iterate a couple of different prototypes, which is really, really cool. And that's what I like about the process of making. It's like prutsen, tinkering in English. But I think that prutsen is a much better word because it sounds so cool. Guido Stompf, I think one of the main experts in the Netherlands when it comes to design thinking, says that prutsen is the new innovation. And I think he's right, because prutsen is really important. Experimenting, doing stuff, seeing if it sticks. I mean, this is essential designing. So we are going to do this too. This is an explanation of the intervention design method and the steps we'll take the upcoming weeks. For now, let's start doing. Open your Miro board and go to work. Have fun!